To people who have come to the US. What's something that Americans do that we don't even notice? Drive everywhere. I was staying with a friend who lived about half a mile from a small town. I got up early one morning and walked into town to get some shopping. When I got back, she couldn't understand how I'd made it there. I don't drive and back on my own steam. It took me like 10 minutes each way. I walked that far to my nearest bus stop for work. A lot of places in America are deliberately built around automobile travel. The prevalence of cul-de-sac neighborhoods, lack of sidewalks in a lot of places, and general urban and suburban sprawl all came about as part of a cultural shift brought about by the prevalence and affordability of American automobiles, especially after World War II. Well, that and the fact we have a ton of land. Cities built before cars or where land is limited like New York do go up instead of out. Places like LA have no need to pack people into a small space. LA also essentially banned buildings higher than 13 floors. This is fairly recently changed, 2014 I think. So it will likely be different in the coming years. We talk loud as peep. I was in France for several months and it was like everyone was whispering. After 3 months my family visited and I was thoroughly embarrassed by how loudly they spoke. 2 weeks back in the US and I was back to full volume. This is part of the reason why a lot of people think of Americans as obnoxious. In a public setting, everyone in a 1 kilometer radius knows there's an American around. By month 3 I could hear my fellow Yanks because their inane conversations would echo down the tunnels of the train stations. It was very useful when I was bored and wanted to meet someone new. When Americans say, "I'm German," what they mean is that their ancestors immigrated from Germany a while back. The same goes for any other nationality. Unless you have an accent, the assumption is that you're referring to your ethnic group, not your nationality. When I was there, in 2012, there were adverts on TV for some miracle pill followed immediately by adverts for lawyers asking if you'd taken some other miracle pill and you were entitled to compensation. WTF? I seem to remember something like this happening to me. It was an ad for some drug followed immediately by a "this drug has been linked to stroke, heart attack, and death" ad from a lawyer. TBH. An ad from a lawyer is already a very American thing by itself. So are adverts for medicines. You guys seem to be in a constant hurry. What's with that? Places to go. People to see. Serve the most amazingly massive portions of food I've ever seen. I ordered one meal in Oregon and the lady who owned the place looked me up and down and said, "You sure about that, little fella? I'm 6'0" and around 190 pounds. The meal came on 2 plates and I didn't eat again until the next day. But I finished every beeping bite. You generally do that here. Half the meal is eaten there. The other half feeds you for the rest of the following day. The other half feeds you for the rest of the following day. How about just lunch? But yet, talk to strangers or acquaintances. In the UK you don't even talk to people who go to your school/work unless you really like them when you see them in the street. Edit. This rule generally applies the further south you go. Though, I am personally from a place in the north of England and the antisocial way is slowly creeping upwards. We used to be real chatty where I am, according to my parents. I took a bus from LA to Vegas and strangers around me struck up conversations like they were lifelong friends. In NZ, we do our level best to ignore each other on public transport. So I was blown away by how friendly everyone was to each other. Drive-through everywhere. Need to go to the bank at 3 a.m? No problem, just drive in. Also, How much disposable things are used in everyday life? Like cups and plates. My school invited some Japanese transfer students to come stay with us for a while. We asked them that question and they said it was really odd that we didn't have many street lights along roads. When I was in Florida, everyone thought I came from Australia. My accent is Mancunian, as in Manchester, England. Specifically northern Manchester. Side note: there's also like an accent/dialect change every 10 miles in the UK, so I can imagine you guys don't recognize most Brits by their voices. Managed to cause gridlock traffic on 12-lane freeways. People merging on the highway going 35 miles per hour. And apparently no one knowing how a passing lane works. Traffic all the time. TV commercials saying buy our product X. It's better than product Y made by an other company. In the UK, competitors' products are never named in a commercial. The closest you get is compared to the leading brand. Also, saying what? When you don't hear someone properly. That's considered pretty rude in the UK, we just say pardon or sorry instead. Not sure what we're apologizing for though. Think we just like being self-deprecating. Also, your petrol is so cheap. Currently $1.30-ish per liter in the UK. For any Americans wondering, $1.30 per liter in Freedom units is $6.51 per gallon. One of the first things I noticed was the TV advertising of prescription medication that urge patients to bring up X with their doctor. That would not fly in other countries. I, as someone born and raised in America, find this really odd still after 21 years. I mean, if this prescription medication can treat my condition, shouldn't my doctor have already considered it? Sitting at a bar and being in the way of people trying to order drinks. It's uncustomary to have everyone sit along the bar in any pub, bar, boozer, alcohol establishment. You get the gist. In the UK, the bar is where people go to order drinks and then walk away from, not somewhere to sit at. I was in Chicago 2 years ago, and the first few bars we went into, we had to order drinks from a passing waitress as we couldn't get close to the bar due to everyone sitting all the way along it. Just not a done thing anywhere else I've been. Bar America. This annoys us too. Why is your money all the same color? Every time I went shopping I held up the lines because it took me a lot of time to scramble through my wallet to find the correct banknotes because everything is the same color. No longer true. Hundreds are bluish. Fives are reddish. 20s and 1s stayed green. And 10s are kind of tan if I remember right. The girl I'm dating always cracks up at how I American count starting with my index finger instead of my thumb. NBSP. At work, they think it's funny that I have old-fashioned brown leather steel-toed boots instead of the modern, sneaker-looking safety shoes. Looks at hands. Pretends to count. Hey, I do that too. I start with my right hand pinky. You're a goddamn psychopath. They always preface a question with, "Can I ask a question?" No, you may not. And you just did. That will be $500. The American healthcare industry. A play-by-you/bacon rap pimp. A tragedy to surpass Romeo and Juliet. Make small talk with strangers passing on the street. I felt like multiple people knew me, acquaintance or closer level. I was in South Dakota. Replying to thank you with yep or something similar. I know it's cultural. And not intentionally rude. But damn if it doesn't jar me every time. Meanwhile, a fellow Canadian responding to a thank you that way is passive-aggressive AF. That's kind of funny because most the time I hear people respond like that is because it would seem rude to say you're welcome because it would make it seem like the favor they were doing you was bigger than it actually was. I guess for me the response for a really small favor like that, say holding the door, would just be something like no problem. Whereas would be reserved for when someone has really inconvenienced me and I want them to know it. Funny how cultural differences can flip things around. XD. They work far too much. Edit. Wasn't trying to be offensive. I just think at least 4 weeks off per year, like where I live, is still too little holiday time. Working with Americans, I see how much less time they get to recoup. As an American engineer who spent a good portion of his career working for a Swiss company, I can't agree more. I was expected to work about twice as much as my Swiss and German counterparts. Don't get me started on the Italians. I would put in 60-hour weeks, they'd work 30 to 40. I started with 10 vacation days a year. They started with 25. I had to log all of my time down to the 15-minute mark in a productivity tracker. Their boss didn't question how they were spending their time because as long as the work got done they were doing their job. Us Americans really screwed ourselves by letting our bosses buy our government. I had to log all of my time down to the 15-minute mark in a productivity tracker. God, nothing grinds my beeping gears quite like this does. If you want to make me a salaried employee, don't micromanage my time like an hourly employee. Salary, as far as I've seen, is only an excuse to be able to work you greater than 40 hours every week without paying anything extra. 60 hours. Sure. Your salary. Still get paid for 40. Oh. You need to leave early for a doctor's appointment one day. Better make up that time so you're working at least 40 or you'll have to use leave. Sigh. Americans tend to report annual salaries like it's from a 40-hour work week. A $100K annual salary isn't as impressive when the person is working 70 to 80 hours a week. It's really just like having 2 full-time jobs. Let's get dinner sometime. Conversations that rarely ever materialize. It's almost understood that if you say it open-ended like that rather than setting a date, it's a gesture of good faith rather than an actual invitation. Kind of like "how are you?" is a greeting rather than a question. Gush over my broad Australian accent. G'day mate. Nah. I don't ride a kangaroo to work mate. But thanks for asking. Totally harmless and funny. I get it. But it does get a bit old after a few days. I would just blush and do everything I could to extend the conversation. Gush over accents. From my own experience, the say something British was weird when I was over there, but my wife went with her family when she was about 7/8, and as soon as she opened her mouth she would have people clustering around her as they couldn't believe the accent Middle England coming out of a extremely blonde small girl's mouth. At one point in a restaurant the waiter had to go away and compose himself as he couldn't stop laughing when she ordered her food. He did apologize when he returned. I go out of my way to ask every Scotsman I see to please say the phrase "purple burglar alarm." Also try all the squirrels in the world. I thought it was just a stereotype that American high school girls said like for every 3 to 4 words. But some of them really did. It was like they just couldn't help themselves. Like it's like they're Tourette's or something. Like they just have to say it. Also shoes inside and carpet floor in the kitchen/bathroom and plastic siding on houses. Weird. I've never seen carpet in a kitchen in my entire life. Edit. Damn. Some of y'all had it rough. My condolences. I had an apartment in Rochester, New York with a carpeted kitchen. It was horrible. Sounds like Rochester to me. Not including tax in the price of an item in a store. Pretty much everywhere in Europe includes the tax in the price. Point out accents with ease. I'm from Canada and nearly every conversation I have in the States involves asking where I'm from. I didn't think it was that obvious. We're really good at telling if someone has an accent. We can only vaguely guess where you're from though. All the intricacies of the dialects across the UK blend together to our ears. Working hard even in some minimum wage jobs. And generally being decent human beings, at least in contrast to where I live. Myself and my parents frequently complimented them on their good behaviors/attitudes, and they would usually just respond that they are just doing their job. Sometimes at work I'll put 110% into a project. And I'll think to myself, this is so good. I deserve credit for this. I hope somebody notices. Then when a customer notices and tells me, I reply I'm just doing my job because I'm uncomfortable with being praised. Eat waffles with chicken. How dare you? It's chicken and waffles. When I've stayed in any hotel in the US, if I pass someone in the corridor, they say hello or good morning, etc. No one would do that here in the UK. A nod if you're lucky. Perhaps. Also, people talking to each other on trains. In the US I've had people strike up friendly conversations with me. That would just never happen here, and if it did, the other person would probably get so uncomfortable they'd switch carriages. Also, calling someone sir just as a matter of course in regular conversation, like a kid to an adult man. For instance, saying thank you for your service to soldiers when you see them. I've never seen that anywhere else, and here it would sound really contrived. Talking in the cinema and interacting with the film. Odd. So many 80 breaks. Turn right at a red light. This one we probably notice. It's perfectly legal to do so in many places across the US. It's legal everywhere in the US except NYC, or where the light says no right turn on red. Most, not all, states let you turn left from a one-way to a one-way street. I don't know if this is something Americans notice. Nevertheless, I was amazed by it. I went for a 3-week holiday to Hawaii. On our flight back home we flew from Honolulu, Los Angeles, Miami. At each airport we would spend at least 4 hours. Every airport had its own culture, people, and languages. I flew almost 7,900 kilometers. And yet I was still in the same country. But it didn't feel like it at all. I think a lot of non-Americans don't always realize just how big the country is. I mean, it's almost as big as Europe itself. European countries are so small. And it's easy to travel through different countries and cultures. Whereas we are fairly isolated. So American stereotypes, as far as I can tell as an American, are really regional stereotypes that don't apply to most of the country. Not all Americans are fat, loud, rude, eat at McDonald's, etc. It's amazing how different areas of the country feel so different. As you said, I remember someone once saying that the world views America like America views Texas. It just keeps proving true as I go on. As an American who has lived overseas for a decade but now am living in Texas, this statement explains a lot of my present chagrin. Apparently, this is the caricature Russians use for Americans. American here. No arguments. We do smile a lot. Very cool thing is to drive through a red light if there's no one and you turn right. Saves time. Only on certain states tough. Almost no roundabout and no right priority. Only stops and red lights. So easy. At red lights, you still have to stop before you are allowed to turn right on red. Americans hold their fork in their left hand to restrain their food as they cut with the right-handed knife. Then switch the fork to the right hand to pick up and eat the food. This is odd. What's the standard? Just keep the fork in your left hand. I tried switching to this method, and it's so much easier once you get the hang of it. Which only takes a couple meals. The same goes for 24-hour time. Hey. How are you? Well, I'm not so good today. Woke up with a headache and I didn't even drink. Had a good sleep, I guess. But a bit too long. My dog is getting older and I can see the end of her life is coming nearer. And tomorrow I'll have to go to the dentist and what? I mean, I'm fine, how are you? The how are you thing is not a question. It's like saying hi. You can give a response that indicates your mood. And then the other person can start a conversation. Hey. How are you? Met. Not so great. Uh-oh. Dog still sick at the vet's? Yeah. Plus I've had a headache the past few days. Conversation continues. Or the first person can hope things get better and keep walking. Yet or something like. How are you? Not too great. Feeling a little sick but getting better. You. Just keep it brief.